Every day around the world, 828 million people suffer from hunger, an increase of at least 46 million people as compared to 2022. That is just one of the major conclusions of the 2023 State of World Hunger, published by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, established in 1945 at the end of the World War II to examine and to produce policies that will ensure a sustainable agriculture and sustainability of food around the world. What accounts for such an increase of global hunger as at least 3.1 million people suffer from some kind of food insecurity out of the roughly 8 billion we are today, according to the United Nations. My guest today on Globewatch is the Assistant Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, based in Rome, Italy. Dr. ABEBE Gabriel, thank you very much indeed for being guest on my program.
It's a pleasure.
One of the missions of the food and agricultural organizations in the world is to combat hunger. Currently, you have about 828 million people suffering from hunger, a surge of about 46 million compared to last year. That is according to the latest report. Why this increase?
Thank you so much. Indeed, it's not just one of the core mandates, it's the core mandate of FAO to end hunger. And you are right that hunger has been increasing globally, and particularly in the African, on the African continent, it has been increasing. It's not because production has been falling, and in fact, hunger is rising in spite of an increase in production. It means access to food by a majority of the people has been very difficult, and it has a lot of reasons for that. In FAO, you mentioned the recent report. We identified drivers why the hunger is increasing, malnutrition has been increasing. What are the drivers? One, as you know, is the natural factor related to climate change. Droughts, which have been less frequent in the past, like recurring once in every 10 years or more. Now,
precisely in the Horn of Africa.
In the Sahel, also much of Africa and West Africa, in the Sahel, and then floods in Southern Africa and Western Africa. These have become a regular occurrence. But also we have transboundary pests and diseases, old pest diseases, new diseases. The fall armyworm, for example, that came to Africa since 2016, expanded to cover all African regions, and African countries were not prepared to do that, but the impact has been negative. We have economic slowdowns, global economic slowdowns due to a number of reasons, like war and conflicts within Africa, destabilizing lots of people. The war in Ukraine, which is far away geographically from Africa, but the impact on availability of fertilizers and certain commodities such as oil seeds, oil, and wheat has been impactful. Globally, we are interconnected. So there are so many interconnected drivers and shocks, and African countries, our systems, our agri-food systems, have not been adapting to these changing circumstances. They have been vulnerable.
I was expecting you to say that for the 46 million increase of the last report, that possibly the COVID-19 had a huge impact. In your internal analysis and evaluation, did you notice the pandemic? You just mentioned the war in Ukraine as one of the key drivers for the surge, for the increase in the global hunger rate. Did COVID-19, which redefined all the food production systems in the world, did it greatly impact that
Yeah, you may have noticed that one of the drivers I mentioned was transboundary diseases and pests.
Okay.
And COVID-19, of course, was
sure.
one of the most prominent defining actually agri-food systems. You know, even when you have globally available supplies, you cannot move them. You know, the logistical problem became a nightmare. Supply chains were disrupted. There was no movement. Trade was halted, and that significantly affected access to the majority of the people, but also to production. You know, production of, for example, fish was significantly affected. Those fishermen who had, you know, who were fishing, nobody was there to collect what they have collected, and so they lost a lot, and they don't have a lot of cash to fall back on. Okay. And in Africa, unlike in other developed countries, we don't have a support mechanism, incentives, you know, to absorb the shock, because the institutions are weak. Governments do not have enough budgets to provide for these kinds of massive need. So you are right. COVID-19 significantly affected the agri-food systems globally, but also in Africa.
Okay. Like I indicated, and you confirmed, one of your key missions and the core of all your work is the reduction of global hunger, and which, of course, is a priority of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are just roughly 6 years from that deadline of 2030. When you look at the way the global food supply chains operate today, do you think that ending hunger by 2030 will be a reality? I know that the Millennium Development Goals put roughly nearly 1 billion people out of poverty.
With the rate of change that's happening up to now, and you are right that about 7 years, we are ending 23. In fact, like 6 years remaining before the 2030 target. So if we continue with the kind of pattern, growth pattern over the last few years, there is no way we will be able to achieve the SDG goal, in particular of SDG 2, which is zero hunger, but also SDG 1 on poverty, and SDG 10 on equality as well. These things have been exacerbating instead of going down, irrespective of the efforts that the countries have been putting in place to increase production. As I said, there are a number of factors. You know, urbanization in Africa is one of the fastest, and the population growth is you know, one of the fastest as well. And both production, when we talk about agri-food systems, it's not just the production. It's also about the processing, the handling. The post-harvest loss is significant.
I was following the president of the African Development Bank the other day doing analysis of how much Africa needs to achieve food security at the wake of the war in Ukraine and at the wake of COVID-19 and other occurrences you just mentioned, drought in the Horn of Africa and in the Sahel region. That should be roughly $15 billion just on the continent. With your bilateral and multilateral partners at the global level, what kind of resources do you need to mobilize in particular, apart from the financial resources?
The resource requirements are significant.
Okay.
And for Africa, we are just beginning, you know. Our production levels are very low. If you compare agriculture productivity, African levels are about 1/3 of the average for developing countries, not for the developed countries. So we have to do a lot to increase productivity. And for this, you need to apply science and innovation and technology. And these things do not come for free. They must be generated, developed, and so on. You talked about resilience building. You know, the resilience building in terms of infrastructural deficits Africa has is huge. And so the resource requirements are way above the $15 billion mark you are talking about. We believe that Africa can generate resources, substantial resources internally. If I give you information, Africa imports food. Forget about other imports. Food imports to Africa every year, they are over $60 billion. Now you have mentioned 15 billion, right? Only food coming to Africa costs more than $60 billion every year. And this is not on loan. We're not borrowing to pay for our foods. We pay ourselves. Okay. You go to supermarket, you buy, isn't it? You don't pay, you don't use credit card. You use cash. Everybody else is doing the same. So if we have the right kind of policies to enable us invest a portion of this to boost production, productivity, but also transform the agri-food systems for better production, for better nutrition, for better environment and better life, leaving no one behind. Okay. It is possible to turn this ugly situation around.
Okay. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations operate regional bureaus, and apart from being the Assistant Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, you are equally its Africa Regional Director. Since 1945 that the agency has been existing as a specialized one of the United Nations, what will you identify as the key benchmarks of a success story you have built in Africa to have good agricultural practices and accompanied by sustained food production?
You're right. FAO has been there since 1945. In Cameroon here, we've been collaborating with the government since 1960. In 1978, FAO office here in Cameroon was established. In 2015, we have elevated the partnership, the collaboration to a level of partnership and liaison. I'm just giving you the example of Cameroon to show you that it is an evolving partnership. FAO is there to support its member countries. It will not do things...
194 plus the European Union 195.
Yeah, support the efforts of the countries. What we have been emphasizing is national ownership of programs, initiatives. National leadership of programs, initiative is key. FAO is not going to own, is not going to lead initiative in any country. It only supports the countries taking advantage of our comparative advantage. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of technical know-how. We have a lot of networks, as you rightly said. We are present in all our member countries, and we facilitate exchange of experiences, good practices among countries. But ultimately, what determines is the quality of leadership and the country ownership and the quality of those policies and strategies. We support countries developing good practices based on evidences. So the lesson overall, all these years is national ownership, national leadership, key, institutions, national institutions, effective institutions to implement the initiative is very important. Ownership demonstrated by allocation of resources, national resources. We shouldn't start from external resources. Countries should start by allocating resources to agriculture and food system transformation. This is one of the, by the way, principles of the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, CADEP, of the African Union, and we collaborate very closely with them to ensure that countries really live up to what they have said.
In a moment, we'll talk about your specific programs. There is a term and a sentence which is recurrent with FAO work, and that is food systems. To my ordinary viewers in Addis Ababa, to my ordinary viewers in Polokwane in South Africa, or to my ordinary viewers in Niamey in Niger, what does that actually translate?
When we talk about food, what comes to mind? It is the nutrition, healthy diet, the food that we eat as consumers. That's what comes to mind.
Okay.
Okay, so it's about that food, the food that is prepared, ready, and that we as consumers eat. But how does it come? Where does it come from? What are the ingredients? So it starts from the inputs, the seeds, the soil, the natural resources, the production proper. But it is not only the production proper. The post-harvest. In Africa, we're talking about between 15% up to 40%, depending on the type of crop.
The storage systems.
Poor storage system, poor handling system, transportation system, treatments, like it's a lot of, and also we don't process our food. You see, we just take it from farm, try to store it, just like that, and
the perishable and the non-perishable ones.
Yeah, so processing, which should create jobs for a lot of people if we link it with industrialization. So agro-industries and so on, handling, processing, and then the actual preparation of food. Everything goes to that table which we see, which we are consuming. And who are involved in this? It's not only the farmers. Of course, the farmers, the fisher people, the livestock,
the marketers,
the production. If you just look at the production aspect, what comes to mind is the farmers, the farm and so on.
Yeah.
But how about those who are assembling, who are transporting,
the packaging,
who are packaging, who are processing, who are selling it in the market, the health people who make sure that, and those in the protection. How about those who are
quality assurance and all of
the
that?
Quality, the food preparing, the people who are preparing food. In Africa, who is preparing food? It's the women, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We tend to forget about that.
Yeah.
And the consumers.
And the consumers.
Consumers themselves are the stakeholders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has a lot of actors. It's not just the farmers.
Yeah.
A lot of actors and a lot of stakeholders.
Okay.
And so it involves this interconnected chain of supply relationships that will result in the kind of both quality and quantity of the food we eat.
Before we take questions on your specific programs like telefood and assurance for agricultural production, let me put this question to you. You mentioned a while ago the interconnected nature of the work you do at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And one of them is climate change, which is becoming a recurrent theme in considering policy conception, policy application, and policy consumption. I just wonder how greening agriculture is part of your strategy today.
It's not just part of our strategy, it is at the center of whatever we do. Because naturally, agriculture is green and blue, if we talk about fisheries and aquaculture. So blue transformation is also a strategy within FAO. So greening agriculture. Did you hear me talk about a better environment in addition to better production, better nutrition?
Absolutely.
Better environment?
Sure.
Yeah, we believe that agriculture can contribute to climate solutions in Africa. It's about integrating the production system with conservation of natural resources, with adaptation.
So issues like greenhouse farming, with people like Obasanjo heavily investing in them, they are part of your system today?
We combine, we propose a package of solutions,
okay. And that is just one of them?
It's just one of them, because every strategy works for different contexts. Okay, why do you need that kind of farming when the environment, the natural environment, conducive already for you? So we diagnose problems. And when we propose a solution, the type of farming, the type of agriculture should respond to the challenges that are faced by, we have, let me mention, we have what we call hand-in-hand initiative. Now about 36 African countries are participating. And in fact, Cameroon was also one of the countries, and the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development went to Rome in October to present the hand-in-hand investment plan. So what FAO does is, number one, we support the country to do analysis, to identify areas which have good potential but low performance. The reason why there is low performance is because there are some bottlenecks. And the analysis would give us a clue as to what kind of solutions, actions would unlock those bottlenecks, and what are the investment opportunities. And we help the country prepare these investment plans. And then FAO provides a platform, global platform. People, the countries will go to Rome, they present it to investors. FAO invites investors, donors, multilateral, bilateral donors, foundations to interact directly with the officials of government to enhance. So this was a very typical example of geographical specific recommendation based on geospatial data.
In a moment the interview will come to an end. You run so many initiatives around the world to help you realize your mandate, and one of the initiatives is of course Telefood, which of course is a program where you rally celebrities from the media, from the film industry to the entertainment industry like football, cinema and all the rest, to raise money to finance and provide food to people around the world. I know that over the years you have raised about $175 million, depending on cases to cases. Is it buried or is still existing, or COVID-2 affected it?
Yeah, the Telefood program. Yeah. These are not big programs. They are small programs. But they just address very particular, specific solutions. So we have not buried it, but it is, you know, the way we work with member countries is demand-driven. Okay. FAO does not impose any strategy on any member country. Okay. We engage in a collaboration, in a partnership. We show them what works under what circumstances, provide the necessary information for them to make decisions, and we then accompany them to implement. So it's demand-driven. If you haven't seen it in Cameroon, it means the way
it used to exist. I'm just saying that for some time now. I haven't seen
in Cameroon now, there are other bigger initiatives. I just mentioned, for example, the hand-in-hand initiative. I can also mention the one country, one priority product. Cameroon has selected banana as its champion crop to, you know, promote globally. And FAO serves as a kind of marketeer, you know, in a global sense of the term. We provide the network. Okay. And yeah, so there are others, the digital agriculture, digital initiative. We have the Green Cities initiative also.
There are so many actors involved in the work you are doing. There is the World Food Program, there is the Fund for Agricultural Development, and there is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Who does what, where, how, and why?
Very good. Very good question. These are called Rome-based agencies. These UN agencies you have mentioned, FAO, WFP, World Food Program, and IFAD, International. WFP and IFAD, they were born out of FAO. It's FAO member states who've created them to do specialized work. WFP to work on humanitarian, to focus on humanitarian aspects, meaning there have been, you know, people destabilized due to natural or man-made crisis, wars and so on, and they need temporary relief, making available food supplies in terms of aid, and WFP was created.
It's a UN Humanitarian Food Agency,
yes,
if I understand it clearly.
Yes,
okay.
So it's focusing on humanitarian aspect.
Okay.
IFAD was created to address the challenge of mobilizing funds to support agriculture investment for smallholder.
So it's
a fund.
It's a fund for the mobilization of, in simple English, money for that food to be available.
Money to address the needs of smallholder agriculture.
And then FAO?
FAO is you have started by mentioning our mandate. We focus on transforming the agri-food systems. Okay, production, value chain development, all the way to consumption. We work with governments, with farmers, with herds people, with livestock breeders, with fishery people, with forestry, and for them to produce enough to improve their livelihoods, to make agriculture a viable business. FAO has a strategic framework, a 10 years strategic framework. It started in 2022, and it will cover the years until 2031. And this strategic framework supports countries to achieve sustainable development goals, particularly
Number
1, number 2,
ending poverty and zero hunger.
Ending poverty, zero hunger, and reduce inequality. Number 10, in particular. It doesn't mean that we are not contributing to other SDGs. They are interconnected.
Okay.
And this through a more efficient agri-food systems, a more inclusive agri-food systems for the women, for the youth, and for disadvantaged people. We have regional priority for Africa, which is defined by the ministers. They meet every 2 years. The next one is going to be in Morocco in April. They review progress on the implementation of those priorities, and they chart out for the next 2 years.
And with that, we conclude the interview. The Assistant Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, ABEBE Gabriel, thank you very much indeed for being guest on my program.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes.